Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the DMZ finale, episode 4 at the very least. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I was actually quite shocked with how short this is. It was almost like The Landscapers when I found out, like, wait, that's only 4 episodes? It kind of blew my mind because I was like, oh, because I wasn't expecting it to be that short. I think I heard some stuff about DMZ being this short, but I didn't realize that at the time. Not unless I'm wrong. I mean, this just seemed like a conclusive enough, at least ending. Like, if they wanted to make more, they could make more. But once again, I've never read the graphic novel, so I don't even know where this correlates. Like, is this vastly different from the graphic novel? Does it pick some of the stuff from the graphic novel? So in the grand scheme of the graphic novel story, how much of it was told in this? And how much wasn't, you know? Kind of like an example would be like Preacher. Like how the first season of Preacher is kind of just for the show Preacher. Because where season 1 ends / where season 2 begins is pretty much where the graphic novel started, storyline-wise. So that's why I'm curious if this is something of that nature and something of that ilk. But either way, obviously we're dealing in the aftermath of everything. Obviously, he tried to put up a strong front, but killing Wilson and just the disappointment he saw in Teeny's eyes, you can see how devastated it left Christian or Skell. Which, side note, the actress, I was like wondering, I kept thinking like the actress who plays Teeny seemed so familiar, and I was wondering if it was who I was, and looking into her, the actress's name is Sydney Park, and she plays, I was wondering if it's who I thought it was, and yes, it is. She played Cindy on The Walking Dead. So interesting, you know, another like comic book connection there. She was like the granddaughter of the leader of Oceanside, but then she eventually became Oceanside like after her grandmother died. So like that whole thing. But I was like, oh, okay, she looks so familiar in that regard, and I was like, yeah, I confirmed that was her. Some other comic book connections we'll get to as we progress through the progressing through the episode, but to be fair, like I said, I think this is the one kill that didn't, like, none of the kills sat right with him. He regretted a lot of what he's done over the years, who he became, but it was just a means of survival. He did what his father needed him to be who he claims like, oh, this is who I had to become, but it's like, you know, he still regrets it, because I was thinking like, oh, there's no turning back, you know, at the very least he was trying to say there's no amount of Christian left, I'm just Scale now, but still, like, there was enough there. And I even love that line from Alma where she was like, when she was talking to Teeny later on, it's like, the connection between you and my son, for the first time since getting here, I finally saw my son's eyes again. You know, it wasn't Scale, it was Christian. Whatever it is, whether it is guilt, betrayal, shame, like, I saw it. Even love, call it whatever you want. I saw it, that there's still some part of my son in there, and I'm not giving up on him. Because for Teeny, it's like, your son, like, he's stuck here just like the rest of us. Like, there's no breaking free of who we are. You know, as Susie kind of referred to the cycle, like, they're all stuck in their own cycle of, like, this perpetual thing of who they've got to be, that they can't break free of who they are and who they become in the DMZ. Because a lot of people, once again, it's not just Scale, like, everyone became so indifferent. Even Parko, even Wilson, all became different people because of the DMZ circumstances. So ultimately, Alma got in contact with the FSA, who Wilson was in contact with, and she talked to them and ended up talking to, like, the person that he was dealing with. Turns out we never even got a name, I don't think, but she's played by Rutina, is it Wilson? Wesley, that's it. I had to stop to think for a second. It's like, no, Rutina Wesley, which the thing I best know her from, I mean, HBO-wise, is True Blood, Tara. I believe that's the first thing I ever saw her in. Other than that, I know there was this show on OWN. I never watched it. Nothing against it, but just like, what was it? Queen Sugar or something like that. I'm blanking on it. But I know she was in that for a while. But DC connection wise, she was in a few episodes of Arrow. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, correlating between that. It's actually just kind of interesting. Just in the grand scheme of things, it's like, oh, she was in a DC project, Rosario Dawson was in a Marvel project. You know, projects. It's just always fascinated me in that regard. I mean, I'm curious, has Rosario Dawson ever done anything DC-wise? Like, film-wise, I don't think she has, but that's also the thing, like, live action, I mean, because you never know. Like, there's plenty of people who probably, like, voiced stuff for, like, a lot because there's a lot of DC animated movies, so like she could have easily voiced something that I've just never been aware of. I'm not well versed in their entire filmography, so I wouldn't be too surprised in that regard. But tangents aside, she reached out to the FSA and it's like, cool. Wilson basically became their foothold in the DMZ. Essentially, he basically became a place that they could kind of basically stockpile their weapons, like kind of here. It's like, because each side, the US and the FSA, have all been looking for a foothold to kind of position themselves to kind of get a little bit of an upper hand, because both sides are kind of stuck because the DMZ is a neutral zone that it's like, right, if stuff ever kicks off in the DMZ, once again, a bullet goes past those lines, it's full Fallout war all over again. And so, but at the end of the day, what is Alma like? I'm just going to give you what you want. You want Susie? I will give you Susie. She has all the influence. I mean, like Wilson was just middle management. She's the real one behind the scenes. So if you can get her, you can get all of like Chinatown and all of like Wilson's influence on your side. So I just want safe passage, because it turns out Wilson was trying to get safe passage because he knew like, it's like, yeah, Wilson wasn't a fool. He knew that eventually war was inevitable again, so he wanted to procure, like, safe passage. I wondered, was he planning on taking anyone with him, like Susie or Teeny, like, how he was going to handle that. Like, it's like, that is kind of sad at the end of the day. No matter who it is, everyone's vying and binding for, like, these powers, but at this same, like, they're all both went from, like, Parko and Wilson were both vying for power just to end up selling out the DMZ to look out for themselves, because it's just like, it's a means to an end to put myself in a favorable position, because that way I have a lot more leverage and power to play with the FSA, or in Parko's case the US. So it's kind of sad. I mean, to be fair, once again, Alma didn't come into this with the most altruistic reasons of like, oh, I'm trying to help the DMZ, I'm trying to save the DMZ. It's like, no, I came here for my son. Like, your issues are your issues. I'll use them to my advantage. I didn't come in here to care for the people. Like, not saying she doesn't care about people at all, but it's like, right, she came here with one mission and that's all she cared about. So she wanted to get Susie on her side, so that's led to her talking to Teeny, and we find out Teeny's Queen Dope. I was like, oh, what's she going to show? What was she going to show Alma? And I was like, oh, that was kind of an interesting surprise, because Parko was already saying like, oh yeah, like Queen Dope hasn't said anything on the radio, and it's like, right, because she was like mourning, you know, because I'm sure it hits her even harder because she had the complicated feelings she did towards Wilson. It's like, right, he took me in, he kind of like put me on the special treatment like a princess, like I was his niece and everything. So there's a complicated thing of she wanted to be free from him, just not in this regard. So, and knowing like the person you're like having this like romance with, this almost this forbidden romance with, once again, the Romeo and Juliet-esque element of it all, and for that person to be responsible for your pseudo-father, kind of uncle, like, you know, family's death, it, of course, is going to hit you a certain way. And so she actually convinces Z that it's like, right, you need to be the one to take over Wilson's spot. Like, people, like, you already got Ona backing you up. Like, all you have to do is take that momentum and lead the charge. With Z's like, well, almost like, I don't want to lead the charge. Like, I just want to get my son and leave the DMZ. Like, what would be the point of me, like, with this election? I don't care about it. But it's like, right, whether you stay or not, people will follow your voice, follow you. And so Alma just speaks to them about making their choice. It's like, Parko believes that he's already won. At the end of the day, use your voice. You decide, you know, because it's like, look at your hands, what you've accomplished, what you've built. And it's like, there's so much that was people in the DMZ who will try to tear each other down and kill each other, but look at your own hands, all that you've accomplished. All we were at, like, you know, caught in a complicated situation, but look at your hands, your calluses, all the lines in your hands of how much hard work you went through to build this place into what you want it to be, built out and carved out this life for yourself here in the DMZ. So take that life into your own hands and decide for yourself what you want. Use your voice. So taking a little bit of what Wilson said and just kind of giving it to the people again, but I think wholeheartedly, like, because I think Wilson was still playing a role, and this is Alma just kind of speaking to them just as people to decide. Obviously, Parko's not too happy about that, and so ultimately they end up catching Odie, and they plan to use Odie, which is super jacked up. It's like, yeah, I need you to sneak a bomb into the FSA and blow it up, because it's like, right, if Alma wins, which we both know she will, the FSA is not going to be too happy. They're going to come after her, and you care about her, right? You won't want her to get hurt. This is the best way. I thought it was like, man, you are a terrible human being if you're going to send a kid in there to be a suicide bomber. But then he says this line later on when he was like, yo, I'm not going to be responsible for killing kids. I was like, oh, it's always interesting when you have bad guys who have their morality, that it's like, oh, despite that, you don't want the new kid that you got signed up, nor do you want Odie to die. You want them to place the bombs and legitimately come back, because you didn't. I thought he was going to sacrifice Odie. I thought he was going to have Odie like go. He's like, no, come back and meet me up top. I thought he was saying that just so the kid thinks he's coming back, but it's like, nope, he really wanted the kid to come back. He didn't want to kill a kid. I guess as a father himself, that's kind of what prevented him from he didn't want to do that, so. Because obviously, like, Skell had confronted him about the whole deal with the U.S. and everything. It's like, right, like, why is it that Caesar gets to know more than I do? And it's like, yeah, because you've never shown the initiative. But now, look at you, you're mad. You're about control. And the fact is, the keys to the castle, like, I give you these keys, and you see for yourself in the van, like, what's what. And then when Skell does eventually go, he sees there's a whole bunch of, like, C4 and stuff. So it's like, sees what his dad's really mixed up in. But this whole Alma thing complicates things, because he's got his deal with the U.S., but that's all predicated on him winning, and Alma screwing things up to the point he's like, oh, I should have killed her. And you can see Carmen kind of caught up in, like, right, listening to all that he's saying, and it just, I think he's taken I think she took a lot of what Alma said to heart about, like, right, like, you have to make a choice, Parco or your child. I think Parco kind of made a lot of those decisions for her by his rash reactions of like, right, we got to make whatever the deal with the U.S., we got to make it go down now. And so it turns out his deal with the U.S. is he's going to bomb the FSA, like, basically, and then by igniting the flames, like, they'll respond in kind, and by doing that, this whole all-out war will start. It's basically to kind of put the FSA at a disadvantage, so that the U.S. they're already lining up. They got drones flying over the DMZ. They've already, like, gotten real close to the bridge, because they were waiting for Parco to set everything in motion, because their plan is like, right, once we come in, we do our thing, you get the keys to the castle. Like, once we've kind of made our move, we got our foothold, we'll use the DMZ as kind of like the front lines to do our thing, and when the war's over, the keys to the castle are yours. It's like, once again, he's kind of selling out the people of the DMZ on this promise of, like, he's looking out for them. And I think maybe in his mind, he really does believe that. But even Alma challenges that, because, she's like, right, you were part of the military, because she talked about it previously about Caesar being in the military, and now we find out Parco was too. So, like, this gang life wasn't always his. I guess it's just after he came home and he was tired of going into another country, killing just for, like, people of certain positions and power just to benefit from it. And that was the hypocrisy for Alma. It's like, you fought against that, you hated that, and now you've become what you hate. Like, everything you were against, you now represent, because you're using these people to get what you want. Like, you're basically raking in all the power and prestige and everything from this. You're using these people just like you claim, just like you were used before. Now you're doing the same thing to others. It's almost that sad cycle of, oh, I got used, and now I'm going to use someone else. It's almost like this perpetual, as, once again, the cycle that Susie had kind of referenced previously. And I also love this episode. It adds more context, because I was thinking, like, Teeny was going to be, Teeny as well as everyone from Chinatown was going to be like Wilson's orphans that Alma would have to take care of. But Susie was referencing the entire DMZ. Like, you're already sparking this election and stuff like that. Like, I have a lot of sway and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, are you going to take care of the orphans that are the DMZ? Or are you going to just leave them high and dry when it's all said and done? Once again, her intentions were always simply just to get her son. And even he felt conflicted, especially because he saw, like, that young kid, like, being brought into the kings and everything, and it just made him think of himself of, like, right, the way his dad was like, right, I want you to do this. And even, like, when the whole thing was Scale was like, I have no interest in getting mixed up in all this, leave it to someone else to take care of it. He's like, I'm going to go home. And the sad thing, because even, Caesar was like, oh, don't worry, he'll come around, and at the very least, you could tell Parker was, like, hoping he would. But, obviously, they were when the time came, like, Caesar was ready to kill Alma, because even Alma was like, right, you kill me, Parco, you know you'll lose scale. And it's like, right, Caesar was about to do it, but at the end of the day, seeing his mom run and it brought a lot of that humanity back to him. He'd already been teetering already, and I think her presence just kind of teetered him even more, just making him regret what he did, because I think that was also the thing, and it plays into the episode too. It's just being around his mom was just a constant reminder of he's not that kid anymore. Who I was, Christian, is dead. Like, I'm Scale now, and that's all I'll ever be. Like, that's why he pushed her away, I think, even more, because you'll never want this version of me. Like, I'm not the son you came here to rescue. That person died so long ago. But when the time came, he protected his mom, killed Caesar, and even went toe-to-toe to stop his dad from doing what he was doing, because his dad was disappointed in him. And even the fact is that he's like, get out of my way, and then pull the trigger. Even he was almost like, oh shit. Like, he just did it on instinct. It's like, luckily the clip was empty, because it's like, that's the thing that sets Scale off too. It's like, it's not you were going to pull the trigger, you literally pulled the trigger. You would have killed me in that instant. And even he was kind of like, oh shit, like, he didn't recognize, like, he was so heated, caught up in the moment. He's so close to getting what he wants. He doesn't care if the war is about, because for him it's like the war never ended. It's about getting what's yours and making the best out of it. Like, just that's just the premise of this, everybody trying to get theirs. That's kind of been the thing for episode 1, even to this. I think it's been the main through line. But even then, you know, it ends up in a one-on-one between the two of them. It's actually a really brutal, like, fight. Especially at one point, Parco punches and Scale, like, moves his head in a way and kind of breaks Parco's hand. I just mimicked that, and I kind of hurt my head a little bit when I just did that. Ow. So it was a brutal fight, and his dad kind of had to go like, oh, this ain't no like fair fight, like, this is kind of a street fight, so I'm gonna throw dirt or sand in your face. But even then, like, Scale went to work. He's really good hand-to-hand fighter too. I mean, we've only seen him fight like hand-to-hand one time, and that was against Jordan. So what was that, episode 1? Even then, his dad was like, right, when you got the upper hand, it's like, go ahead and kill me. He's like, at the end of the day, the only way you can grow is if you kill your gods. But Scale didn't kill him. And I think it's interesting because Alma didn't say anything. That's what I was surprised. I thought she was going to be like, don't do it, you'll regret it. It's like, no, I think because for her, it's like, probably, no, you need to make this choice on your own. It's all about choices. I'm telling everyone to make their choices, no matter, it has to be your choice. And him choosing to do it on his own without her saying anything, I think it speaks volumes. Like, right, you're still in there, you know? And for her, it's like, I love you. You will always be my boy. I love you. Damage and all, you know, because she's like, right, I made my mistakes, I missed out on so much, but you're still my son, I love you, I came here for you, you know. And so it's like, right, I got you safe passage out of here because you can't stay here after everything. And he's like, yeah, but whatever happens to me, I deserve it. But she's like, no, we can't make up for our mistakes, but what we deserve is that second chance we've been given. So ultimately she gets well, they send Parco over to the U.S. side of things, which he was like, no, I can't. Don't ask me to leave here. Like, this is, the DMZ is all I've known, like, you know? So don't ask me to go to, you know? And so they force him to surrender himself to the U.S. It's like, right, maybe you'll be able to benefit yourself, pull in some of those connections and stuff, make the best of it. So he has to leave his home and his throne he's built for himself. So we see him kind of getting arrested in the U.S. for, like, illegal entry and such. So... But when the time comes, Alma isn't leaving with him. She's sending Scale off on his own. Like, right, go ahead, make it beautiful. Like, live your life. You have so much life to live, so much love to give, so much art to display. And he's not going alone. Teeny's going with him too. And it's just like, right, like, he finally gets a fresh start again. He gets to finally, for the first time in forever, get to finally live his life of his, you know, at the end of the day, you have to, this is your opportunity to make your own choices, you know? And so she came here for the sole intention of saving her son, and she found the DMZ in that regard. And it's like, I found my calling is to look after this place. I can do some good here. I've been presented this opportunity, so coming to save her son, like, the accomplishment to know, like, I did save you, that I gave you a fresh start and opportunity, that at the end of the day, we might not be together, but eventually I will find my way back to you. but until then, like, you get to live your life, and to me, that's enough. That's more than enough right now. So she decides to stay behind. Tina had given her a letter, and she gave it to Odie, and Odie's the one kind of taking over for the Queen Dope situation. Like, he's the one that's going to be kind of that voice that speaks to the DMZ going forward. So, but she had given her like final message to the DMZ, and that was that obviously by quite a large enough margin, Alma ended up winning the election. Obviously, the dealings with the FSA, they talked to obviously Susie, but it's also the thing of they're probably going to have more interactions with Alma going forward. So it's going to be interesting. Like, obviously, like, what that dynamic looks like going forward, like with the FSA and potentially like her in the DMZ. But it's like, right, it's not just going to be Alma. You're going to be dealing with the DMZ as a whole, because everyone's voices, she's like, right, we're not just like doing the crew thing. We're all like here. Our voices are what matter. Really quickly, speaking of Odie, I like the kind of send off from his grandfather. It's like, right, you're standing on your own 2 feet now, and eventually it will get hard again. But at the end of the day, I'll always be here with you. So I thought that was kind of a beautiful thing of like, you know, like just like Odie finding his way through, finding and making his own choices as well. They found a home with each other, which I thought was kind of pretty neat. Because I like I said, despite this being like maybe like the final episode, I'm sure maybe they're trying to decide whether or not they will do more. Because if you look on IMDb, I feel like more often than not, IMDb will be like, oh, this is a one and done. It'd be like, oh, DMZ 2022, that's it. But it has a 2022 dash. Like either they still, because there's even a question mark, but like this, like whether or not, at least there was, I don't know if that's changed, whether or not there'd be a season 2. It seems like a one and done, but once again, I don't know how this correlates to the graphic novel. I guess it also depends on the reception of the show, which, you know, it's still relatively new enough. Once again, it's 4 episodes, so we'll see. But nothing's resolved. Everything in the DMZ kind of is, but like it's a sliver of a story, because this is all over the course of like a couple days or whatever. So all of that, and you've got the U.S. pulling back because their plans with Parco kind of backfired on them. So it's like, cool, we don't have the foothold we were kind of hoping for so that we can invade. But, you know, it's like the outside world, we never really found out like what really started it. Maybe it kind of doesn't matter, because it's eventually like, you know, what leads to any civil war in any country, just differences of people wanting different things and just things coming down to like, right, the only resolution we can find is like bloodshed for whatever reason. Whatever circumstances may be. Like, we never really, like, you never really get to the politics of it, like what happened that lead to all of this. Just, it is what it is. It's just the setting of the world, and we really don't get into it, because everything in the DMZ is what the story's about. It's about the stories that exist here. The outside world is just the interesting setting that was chosen for this story. So I don't know if that outside world will ever, it impacts what went down in the DMZ, because it was those deals and handshakes and agreements are what influenced a lot of decisions that were made in the DMZ. But that's still such an outside force on both sides. That's still kind of this invisible, faceless thing. You get, yeah, but like, Rutina's character, is the only like person you kind of got to spend enough time with on the different side. And even then, that was only in this episode, and she's only in like 2 scenes at most. But like I said, at the very least, this is a situation of everyone in the DMZ is united, and this is kind of their fresh start, their new beginning as the DMZ, because, you know, some people decided to stay here, some people were simply left behind, but this is their home. This is what they made. She's like, I came here to find my son, and I found each and every one of you. So, and you see like the different heads of the different groups. Like you see Carmen, you see Ona, you see Susie. So how they decide to progress moving forward would definitely be an interesting thing. Of like, it seems like a closed chapter in a story that could continue if they decided to, you know. So just a quick little rundown looking at specifically Screen Rant talking about it. It seems like the show kept a lot of the overarching theme a little bit and stuff of the graphic novel, but apparently the story they told was one of many stories, whereas in the comic, it's like a slash graphic novel, it's about multiple stories, multiple storylines in one, and they kind of basically took one storyline, and everything kind of gets resolved in these 4 episodes. So it's basically on Screen Rant, they're saying like it's super unlikely for there to be a season 2 because of that very nature, just because everything kind of got resolved in one act. But still, I don't know. I was under the impression this was going to be a limited thing, but I also wasn't expecting it to be as short as it was. Like I said, I think I heard about the whole 4 episode thing, but I was still kind of expecting it to be like 10 episodes. Also explains like why they dropped 4 episodes at once, because it's like, okay, that's why. And I guess with the nature of it, it's kind of like, right, we're not going to make you wait week to week for it, which is, I was about to say, never mind. So it seems unlikely. It's one of those interesting things, like, I would be curious to do more stuff in this universe, but at the same time, it's like, everything is in a good enough spot that I'm like, beyond this, like, I guess, because if we were dealing more with other story, and I guess I get where it's coming from. As someone who's never read the graphic novel, hearing that, I'm like, okay, I guess, like, with everything that was going on, if we got to spend more time with other characters' stories in this universe, I guess it would make sense. But I guess maybe that, I mean, maybe I could be wrong, because I am someone who hasn't read the graphic novel. Maybe that lends itself nicely to a graphic novel storytelling-wise, but maybe not necessarily TV-wise. I'm saying that out of ignorance, so I don't know, but I'd be curious to see, like, it's the thing of, like, I'd be interested with more in this world, but there might not be more room to tell. With the story they've told, maybe there's no room for more, or maybe there is, or even if they decide they wanted to end it here, I mean, because to be told, I guess Alma, I think there's still room to find out, like, whether or not Parko still has any room to play. Maybe not. The whole situation with Christian and Alma, maybe just leaving it open of whether or not they'd ever find their way back to each other, which he'd never be able to come back to the DMZ after everything that he's done. They can't change the past, but as she said, you can fix, like, the broken pieces so that we can make a better future. So I think stuff on that line, and just maybe, like, how Z handles, like, leading the DMZ, and whether or not, like, everyone's resoundingly behind her. It seems like a lot of the DMZ's behind her, like, her words reach them, but, you know, you never know, like, stuff could still fall apart afterwards. But maybe that's not the story they would really want to tell. They told what they want to tell, and beyond that, maybe there's nothing more. So, I don't know, just something to keep in mind. So, really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.